started. Okay, here we go. Game on. Shh. Oh, the 6 hour, the new fifth, right? Shh. Okay. Shh. All right, we're not starting with that though. We're starting with this. I put another investment calculator on your. You could share this with your mom, dad, parent, or guardians as well. These last two. I was actually playing around with my own numbers on both as far as investing. Like I was seeing, all right, if I keep doing what I'm doing, what am I going to have in my investment file, this one particular account, when I'm 57, which I'm hoping I can retire at least by then, but we'll see. And then today was this loan amortization calculator. Hopefully I have that named correctly. Okay, so here's what it is, and this is what I was thinking back in the day, way back in August when I scanned the book. I'm like, man, this chapter 13 would be fun to do, to talk about the students or talk to the students about this kind of stuff. Realities, invest early, get the power of compounding working. But then when you buy a house, we'll talk about the power of compounding. So here's what it is. It's a site that allows you to type in, okay, what's your mortgage amount, which is not necessarily how much the house is worth. You may have put a lot of money down. The house may be worth 200,000 and you put 35,000 down in some way, shape, or form. And then, great, I love when that comes up. Then your parameters of the mortgage. So I started with a 30-year mortgage. That's 360 payments, 30 times 12, very simple. And then an interest rate. Back in the day, my interest rate in 2004 was much higher than this. I remember that it was right around 6%, which is one of the questions in the book. Right around, they're a little bit lower. I'm not even sure they're at 4.5. They may be lower than that. I heard they've been bumping up lately. And these go up and down daily. That's why people are interested to hear what's happening in the government. There's often, are they going to raise interest rates this year, which is, the government's in charge of that. Then it affects the bank rates. Blah, 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 blah. So let's say it's 4.5%. What's cool about this then was something that back in the day I was thinking, all right, well, let me zero something out. This is the last thing that we did last hour. What's cool about this is it gives you what's called an amortization schedule, which back in the day in August I was thinking, hey, maybe I'll bring my own and show the students how this works in the real world. All right, and what this is all 360 payments. Well, look at that, isn't that crazy? And then what it does to your loan each time that you do these payments. And it does minorly matter when they receive this money as well. But not too much, So I'll kind of hold off on that statement. But here we go. 8:30. Please pick up that piece of paper. So payment, and then look at. And I could have done this last example. And I think one of the homework assignments, if you would have done it correctly, it would have showed. I think it was like a 3-month loan or something. Anyone remember that in homework? I thought I saw one person do it. Was there? Okay, and then within the 3 months, your first payment was more interest and less against the principal. And then the next payment, it was a little bit less interest and more against the principal. And this is how it works. Look, your $836 payment, only $217 goes against the principal and reduces that number, 165, and $618 is interest. And then in each successive payment, the interest goes down and the amount going against the principal goes up. What's interesting about this is how the bank makes a lot of money in this format. Because if you look after 5 years, which would be 2022, just some interesting facts. Then I'll show you like the power of compounding. That's not yet. March of 2022 would be 5 years. You only got that down to 149,000 whatever. So now let's think about this. Let's talk about those poor people like me in 2004, and then 5 years later it's 2009. The problem with this was that if you bought a house worth 165,000, in 5 years it might have been worth 110. What do you still owe the bank? What do you still owe the bank? 150,000. So if you went to sell that house and you did successfully sell it for the 110, maybe even 115, then you owe the bank $35,000. You don't make money. Right. So that's a risk of owning housing. And that's why you got to be careful. But if you stay in the long run, this would have happened to me if I would have tried to sell my house and after 2009-10. I stayed, and then the value came back up. Unfortunately, it's probably still not where it was where I bought it. And many people probably in this room have family members or your own family members that have the same situation. So it's pretty rough sometimes, but it's not the worst thing in the world. We're still knocking, these values down, and eventually maybe they will recover and go way past what I bought it for. That's what we're hoping for. Um, Before I go back to this, well, let's do this now. Let's look at the end of this. If you pay that payment, and by the way, this payment is only principal and interest. That is not the only thing that goes into a mortgage payment. And I'll go over that when we do our notes today. But let's look at the end of this. Kind of a cool column, second to the right, second from the right, and then the far right column. The far right column is, what do you owe the bank? Well, after 30 years, you owe the bank nothing. The one second to that is what you paid in interest. So you bought a $165,000 house, and you paid the bank $165 plus this $135. Yes. So that's the reality of a mortgage. The bank makes over 30 years $135,000, 971. Sorry, said that weird. So let's analyze that, and then let's say, okay, good old Mr. S just turned into a 15-year loan. I had 18 and a half left on my old one, so I went back to a 15-year loan. This number would be lower, but let's just compare those. And then the reality of it, when you get a 15-year loan, this might be a little too extravagant of a difference, but when you do a 15-year loan, the percentage that they charge you does go down. Okay, so we're going to calculate that, and I think I got to pull up the amortization schedule. So the difference in payment per month is significant. What was the last one? 8 something? I forgot. We'll get it back. Well, okay, that's why you might not be able to do it. And I wasn't able to do this at all in 2004. I couldn't do a 15-year loan because I wasn't making enough to cover the difference between the two payments. So I had to do a 30, which is what most people would run into. But I just want to share, when you do a 30-year loan, you get a lower interest rate and you get it done in 15 years. The difference that you pay the bank in this loan compared to the 30-year loan is significant, which is what we showed yesterday in the notes. Look at that. You only pay the bank $165,000, which you owed them anyway, plus another $47,000. There's almost a $100,000 difference between the two. It's actually closer to 90, but just to get you the power of it. Okay, then this is why I love this website, because this is exactly what I wanted to share with you. And this website does it immediately. All right, so fine, Mr. S, I'm stuck with a 30. I can't afford a 15. And I'm stuck with, I'm sure these are not that spread out, but we'll just stick with it. Calculate, and then that just gets us back to that payment that we had seen earlier. All right, now, the power of compounding. Going the other way when you own a house. Told you, when you should start investing? Immediately, because the power of compounding happens. And if you have the ability to do this, the power of compounding will work when you own a house as well. Okay, fine. I couldn't do a 15-year loan. I could do a 30-year loan, but actually I could afford a little more than this. But I'm stuck with a 30, so I'll stick with this. Well, then what you should do is immediately, whatever extra money you can do, you should. So this is why this site is awesome. Let's say you could have afforded $950. Let's just simply add $100 to your monthly mortgage payment. Where that $100 go is it takes it right off of the principal. So instantaneously in your next payment, your principal is lower than if you did not pay that $100. So now you got more money working on the principal side than the interest side in the column. And then what you see is, let's calculate these extra payments. Look at the power of seeing this right away. Apply extra payments. So I hit that button. Look at when this is done. You just reduced your mortgage to almost a 25-year mortgage. Because in adding that $100 a month, your principal is lowering every month, so it's shortening when you get this done. But it's also reducing the amount that you pay the bank. So instead of giving them $135,000, you give them $105,000, and you've saved yourself $30,000. And your house is paid off 5 years earlier, so you have 5 years you don't have that principal and interest payment. So just by adding 100, and then let's just add 200 for giggles. So that would make it, what was it, 836? No, I know 1036. What was it, 1179 if you did a 15? Well, I couldn't afford it. We're just playing around now, and then we'll get down to what ultimately you should think about when you do this stuff. Boom! Look at what it's done. You almost shorten your loan by how many years? Almost. It's almost right on the dot. Almost what? You just turned it into a 20-year mortgage. Okay, that's what you basically did. And then look at this. You pay the bank only $86,000 in interest. So now what you saved is almost, is that 50? That's your money, okay? Just by adding $200, what it did is shorten your loan and lessen how much interest you pay the bank. And that is your money over 30 years. Actually, over 30 years of a 30-year mortgage, you shortened it to 20 and saved yourself $50,000 out of your pocket. All right? And that's the power. So here's the reality of it. Okay, I do a 30-year mortgage. I can't afford any extra money. And nor could I back in the day when we first got our house. And our payment was a lot larger than it is even now with my 15 because the rates went down. So that's the reality. You're going to start with that. But as you live in your house and as you move on in your career, you make a little bit more money. Instantaneously, you maybe invest a little more, and instantaneously you pay more off of your mortgage. Because the earlier you do it, the more it compounds. Hey, people laughing at me. I don't know why. What the word says. The word says guidelines. That doesn't mean they're set in stone. They're just ideas. When you actually realistically go to the bank, they're going to analyze it. Remember I told you about the credit card? Be careful on that credit card because that's the first way that you build up a credit report or a credit number. And if you miss a payment on that, sure, the credit card companies will jack up your rates, but then also you're going to have a little stain on your credit report. And what happens in reality, you go to buy a car or go to buy a house, car first probably. They're going to look at your credit report, and if it's not healthy, they will raise your rates on what you buy stuff with. So be careful. All right, now 13.3, I just simplified it. I felt like day 1, 13.1, I went a little too far in depth with it, but I wanted to build and make you understand compounding. Then day 2, probably shouldn't have done the credit card example, but I wanted to talk about credit cards. Then we did some other stuff that I thought was powerful. So today I shortened it. A lot more good stuff in there, but probably not, wait till you actually go and buy a house and find out about points and find out why different banks offer different interest rates because there's some things built in. And this book talks about that, but we're going to hold off on that. So, a guideline. What's your maximum home price that you should be able to afford? They say 3 times your annual gross income. When I actually did that and thought about that for myself, it kind of did work out for me like what actually happened. So, here's that. Look at that. So I don't have to write this hour. I just deleted them. Now they just appeared. So if I make 75 grand, 3 times 75 is about what I should be able to afford for a house. Of course, this all depends upon the current interest rates and some other things that we're going to do in a later example. I only have 3. It's very simple. 1 page of notes. And then the other thing is, why would I have to do this then? If, that's it. I should be able to buy this house. Why should I calculate anything else? Well, if anyone knows living in Lockport, how are your taxes? Does anyone know? Are they high or low compared to other areas? They're high. Okay, very high rates. Okay, Lockport was known for that even before I moved here. I used to live in New Lenox, and we knew that Lockport had high taxes. So the tax rate, you owe taxes when you own a house. And we're going to go into that where that's covered. So what this says is what is your monthly housing expenses rate? And then again, this is relative. If you own a Lamborghini, that's an expensive car if anyone knows. Okay, then you're paying a lot of your whatever you make per month towards a Lamborghini. So that's subtracting from what you can actually pay for your house. So this is a guideline, but it really depends about what your debt is when you go in to walk in. So that's why I'm driving a jalopy right now. I have a 2000 Mercury Sable that's brown, thank goodness, because there's rust everywhere. And I hope it lasts another 4 years because I don't have a car payment. Because you buy a car cheap as long as it works and gets you from A to B and is safe, so that you can buy a better house. Because it's the house that but be careful. Again, tread lightly. But housing prices have normalized, so maybe we're okay for right now. So anyway, we're going to analyze what's this monthly payment mean thing. Okay. And what's funny about this is kind of what happened to me in 2004. These numbers are pretty close to what we went to do in 2004 with our house and blah, 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 blah. But these are guidelines. There's much more to it. There's a big process. And then, okay, we're going to compare that to this little statement that's prepared. Don't write what's everything to the left. I assigned you 30 and 32. That's when you can read this. But what this tells you is the reality of what is a mortgage payment. That's what it tells you. Okay, and the reality of what a mortgage payment is, let me see if something happens. Yes, okay, let's go back. Nice, I got scared when I wrote something. Okay, the reality is this. Okay, fine. There is an assessed value for the house, which is usually what they try to sell it for. And then there's bargaining and so on and so forth. And you may get the house for 145 or 142 because they're motivated sellers. So then your loan amount is 115. That means you had some money coming in. So you don't, you sold your old house for a profit and you're rolling that money into this or whatever. So hopefully you understand that. But the assessed value by the government still says this house is worth 150,000 in our minds, and that's what we're going to use as a value to assess how much taxes you owe. It's a big deal. Matter of fact, I told you a bank could take your house. They're number 2 on the list of who gets your house first. The government is number 1. If you don't pay your taxes and don't pay your mortgage, the government will get your house. All right? So you got to pay your taxes. So the reason I'm telling you this is how mortgage companies help you out. And it's illegal for you to not have insurance on your house. So you must have insurance, and this seems like a reasonable number. I'm not sure what our insurance number is. It really depends again. Okay, so I'll show you how a mortgage company helps you out on this. First of all, what are the taxes that you owe? Well, let me go ahead and just throw that number in there. The taxes are your assessed value times, assessed value times your percentage that the city or county or whatever is the tax rate. So this tax rate is the same for everyone that lives in your area. Now, I know there's Homer, there's Crest Hill, so those are different things, all right? And then there's unincorporated and so on and so forth. I'll just tell you this. Once a year, I get a tax assessment, and it tells me what my rate is, and it tells me why. It tells me where is this 2.5% going? And most people don't understand it, and I don't either, probably, because I don't know where some of those, there's general statements there. But anyway, you get this, and then it's multiplied by that, and then you owe, once a year, the area, whether it be city, town, whatever, $3,750. You have 2 choices. 1% of the people maybe choose this. Fine. At the end of that time, I will give them this check, and I'm done. If I miss that, there may be a time grace period, but if you don't pay it, they will take your house. Or you could do this. The company, the mortgage company, can put this in what's called an escrow account. So divide this by 12, and we get $312.50. That's what you would owe per month. And you're going to put that in your mortgage payment that you send to the mortgage company. They're going to put it in what's called an escrow account, and then they're going to pay the tax bill for you out of that escrow account. And what that does is, first of all, allows you to not have to pay a big chunk at the end of the year, and the mortgage company helps you by not missing that bill. Okay, and they're liable for doing it, so it's fine. They would not mess you up on this. Okay, so that is in your mortgage payment. Then, boom, boom. Oh, I did some writing. Boom. They also are kind enough, instead of waiting to the end of the year to pay one big lump sum for your insurance bill, they'll put that in escrow as well. $650 divided by 12, and then that's $54.17 per month. Okay? Got a little battery warning. And then because I didn't feel like writing this one more time, and plus for expedience in our video, you also pay principal and interest. That's this obnoxious formula, 115,000 times 6% divided by 12 times 1 plus 6% divided by 12 raised to the 12 times 30 over that formula I shared with you yesterday. Okay, and then that number ends up being this. And then, like I say, I play with my percentage. Say 99% of the people, everyone I've ever known, I've known nobody that has paid their tax bill. Maybe my father-in-law does, but there may be one person. Most everyone constructs their mortgage payment like this, where they allow the mortgage company to put these in escrow and take care of those bills for them. So that is your true mortgage payment slash monthly expenses to live in this house just for this, not accounting for electricity and gas, because when I say expenses, there's other things. Okay, let me pause the video and then we'll answer that question. Anywho, I don't know if I said this. You add these three numbers up. Did anyone add it? Anyone? No? Thanks, everybody. Wait, maybe I did. No, I didn't. Let's see. No, I didn't. All right. Well, thanks for coming. Perfect timing.